Okay, so I've seen some other people do videos on this, and I don't necessarily agree with their opinions. So here's my thoughts on Walpurgisnacht 5. Well, straight into it, these are good IDs. I don't think that's up for debate. They're good. And I also think that there's nothing wrong with single coins here. I think they're pretty well designed. Speed, good. Like the last time, like that's like mostly done with sync and she associations. Doesn't happen very often, so I didn't really expect to see it here. Granted, Arena, they didn't really have any chance to shine with speed there because ranged and melee coins were different. Ranged would be just instant. It would go before melee, so I don't know, it's a bit odd, but overall good. I think it would be better if it was a two-star identity instead of a three-star. I mean, Hong Lu here is so much like wow, obviously stronger, but they're both three-star IDs, which I don't really get. I mean, I guess they're trying to increase their rarity so they can make some more money. Fair enough. They got some things that they're trying to finance. I'm not going to blame them for that. But still, I also think it would have been nice if we had a Stefan identity to go with these two so you could have the entire team there. But I guess they didn't want to clog the ID pool too much. Still, having two-star identities would have been nice. Not just for the sake of having them, but just, have the whole team there. It would have been cool. I understand though, like these identities are pretty complicated. Like, look at how much they got going on. They got special ammo, they got their own reload, they got retreat, they got basically assist attack, they got two defense skills, clashables, alternative skills. Like, this is a lot going on, so I understand if they just like straight up didn't have the time or resources to make another identity because like they would have had to make more art, animations, design, and they would have had to balance them all together and to make them all interact. Making two identities interact like this already, well, it's something. So I understand. I just think it would have been neat. Um, what else? I like the reloading. Um, I do genuinely believe that all identities with ammunition should have reload at some point, like maybe with the next up tie, or they can be straight up reworked as is to incorporate reloading somehow, like whether through retreating or with Yisang's like spending sanity, just because there's like you use an ammunition ID and you run out of ammo and it's like they're hitting like a wet noodle. Like it's just not worth it anymore. Like our Carp Heathcliff is so good. Obviously, I don't know if of course he's probably still gonna hold up today. It's just that he doesn't shine as brightly as he did back in the day. And I never really liked using him because of the ammunition restrictions and the fact that all of his skills used ammunition. But these identities perfectly work around that. Having ammunition is good, and but running out of ammunition doesn't immediately kneecap the character. Here it says when flipping a coin that consumes ammunition, even when this unit is out of ammunition, the attack does not get cancelled, but the on-hit effects do not activate. And he's got a lot of on-hit effects. So yeah, that's a loss. But at least you're still doing something. Unlike like Rabbit Heathcliff or LCCB Ishmael, which just they just don't do anything when they run out of ammunition. They hit like once. And of course, Rabbit Heathcliff also has some design problems. So I think as more identities like this start to come out, you're gonna start seeing Rabbit Heathcliff look not so good. Like, of course, he's Unga Bunga, but that's all he's really. I don't use him because, yeah, he's cool. Like, I love the design of the rabbits, but it feels like R Corp has kind of actually been neglected by this point. And I think it's just because Project Moon is a little afraid to make more of them because of how strong they are. Like, I can guarantee you, if they release an R Corp team, there are a good amount of people who would use that full team and nothing else. And like right now, you see them being used with other charge IDs. Like, fair enough. Eh, Like, the only one that's not really used that much is R Corp Merceau, which I think is a tragedy. Merceau has so many. I'm getting off topic, but these are strong, solid designs, and I think they're gonna stay good for a long time, although they are locked behind Walpurgisnacht. Um, I watched Ezgu's video, and he said that he's upset about some IDs. Like, he specifically said he's upset about Magic Bullet and how burn support is locked behind Walpurgisnacht. I have to partially agree. I don't think there's anything wrong with Walpurgis not having particularly strong things going on or having things locked behind it, because it's supposed to be special. It's supposed to have its own thing going on. It's supposed to be worth pulling for. Because if you could just, get this level of strength and content for the rest of the game, what's the point in pulling in Walpurgis not? Granted, I do think, though, I have to agree, that Burn needs more support outside of Walpurgisnacht. Because, like, all the good burn IDs are in Walpurgisnacht, except for maybe like a couple of the Lou IDs. Like most of the Lou IDs are actually kind of garbage too. It's just Lou Ishmael and Lou Rodian that are worth using. The rest of them kind of disappointing. Lou Ryoshu is somewhere in the middle. She's like a respectable 2-star ID. She's not that bad for her rarity. But like you got Han Lu and Gregor and Merceau. Once again, Merceau butchered, not that great. Though I still have to argue that he's not that bad. He's got to be like the fourth best. That's not that great, considering everything. But he also has to compete with later IDs like Lu, Rodian, uh, Ishmael, Ryoshu. So there's that. But what Lu Miso does well is apply burn count, and like most statuses, count count's not that great for most statuses. Like bleed, that's not so bad. You get a good amount of count unless you're using the Blood Fiend IDs. Burn, um, it feels like a good amount of burn IDs. Well, I mean nowadays it's not so bad. You got Philip, but that's behind. Well, Perk is not. You got Lou. Lou Rodian does consume burn count, which is a bit problematic. You got Lou Ishmael, who applies a pretty healthy amount of burn count. I guess the burn count isn't that bad nowadays. It used to be terrible. Nowadays it's okay. But then there's the actual. I'm busy. Then there's then there's actually dealing damage, which is what he I think Esgu was getting at with like Dark Flame, because Dark Flame makes burn actually deal a lot of damage. Granted, it's at turn end, but it's a lot of damage. And then there's also um, there's one mirror dungeon gift that makes you deal the burn damage on the first hit of every skill, like once per identity. So it's like you can activate it 6 more times, which is unsurprisingly really good and actually makes burn fairly strong, which makes it more on par with rupture, bleed, that kind of thing. We're still in a position where you need mirror dungeon gifts to actually make the most out of status effects, but at the same time, they also make status effects just really strong in general. So I can see why Project Moon is a bit more hesitant to introduce some of these effects into the proper game, because one misstep and you make something like, oh, I don't know, Talisman Sinclair. And I've heard people saying that they're scared to even touch Rupture with a 10-foot pole because of Talisman Sinclair. I don't know how true that is, because we've gotten some pretty good Rupture IDs like Devyat and Sync Miso. Granted, they do have those caps on them, but I think that's an interesting mechanic. All things considered, it's not really a limitation. It's just interesting because you get a trade-off. You get a Rupture, and you don't consume it in exchange for not going that high. But then you can also just circumvent it with Talisman Sinclair, because, oh, you don't inflict Rupture anymore? I'm pretty sure you still do with Talisman Sinclair. Um, Granted, when you do use Talisman, you got the risk of, if you get hit, you're taking Rupture damage too, and they can actually be pretty devastating sometimes. But if you're playing the game correctly, usually you don't get hit. But there is that exception, which is the nefarious, unbreakable coins. You're going to get hit if you don't stagger the target. And if you're fighting a boss enemy, you're just going to get hit. And I do think that's one way that may have accidentally gotten around Talisman Sinclair being so strong, is that, let's say, you're fighting someone like Don Quixote and you got 4 unbreakable coins, and you got, let's say, 8 talismans, which is like the minimum. You're going to take 8, 16, 24, 32 rupture damage on top of all the other damage you would take. That's flat damage. You can't reduce it. So that's going to hurt. Similarly to how they used bleed, you're also going to be taking rupture damage. And I think the bleed damage in Canto 7 with unbreakable coins proved that unbreakable coin plus status effect really hurts. And so you gotta use healing like fluid sac if you want to stay alive. And at least with bleeding, you can kind of use defensive skills. And there's also some ways to get rid of bleeding. But with rupture, you just take that damage straight up immediately, and you'll probably get staggered and die. Especially since a lot of the more powerful IDs, like probably Hong Lu too here, is probably going to have easy staggers, because if an ID has a lot of power, they get staggered easily. They're squishy. And that's also seen in Rabbit Heathcliff. Like, you poke him too hard, he keels over and dies. I honestly expected Blood Fiend Dawn to be a little more tanky than she was. But I guess it's to be expected. Like, the boss, when you unlock them as a playable character type stuff, um, obviously there's going to be a caveat to all that attack power, but her healing keeps her alive. IDs like this don't really have that much healing. Yeah, I get I'm kind of yapping and going in circles, so I'm gonna get back to this. I love how they had integration with the lobotomy ego here, and it also integrates with the base power and coin power. I didn't expect them to have individual bullets quite like this. Like, I expected them to have different effects, yes. I guess I just didn't know what exactly to expect. I thought it would be a multi-coin, honestly. And yeah, granted, down here, the six magic bullet, reuse the coin. So technically a multi-coin. So I wasn't entirely wrong. And I knew that there would be self-damage because of the animation that they did, but kills the unit? Uh, I mean, granted, it's kind of better than just, I don't know. I'd say it's somewhat on par overall with, at least with the self-damage mechanics, or the team damage mechanics. It's kind of similar to how Yi Sang's Fell Bullet works, with dealing team damage in exchange for dealing big damage. Though I don't know if it would be worth it to take out a relatively powerful identity using a relatively powerful ego just to deal more damage. Though I could see it being an interesting move in content where, like, it's not a mirror dungeon where you need to keep using her, or as a finishing blow, or in chain battles where you can supplement her with another unit. I, but personally, in my gameplay, I'm probably going to be using the first six and avoiding using the seventh. And I would probably just use her skill 3 to spend the seventh bullet and then go back to 0 and start over. It'd be playing it safe, sustained. Now, granted, there are some players who like, Unga Bunga, just deal a ton of damage, kill everything in 2 turns. I don't know. I play the game because it's fun. I like big damage numbers, but I have, like in Mirror Dungeon 5, I've actually been having problems where I'm killing the enemies too fast. And it's a bit boring because, like, I want to use my identities more and build them up to their full power. But they don't even get to their full power before the enemy is dead. Which, I mean, it's kind of funny, but it also removes some of the gratification of, oh, you took your time, you build up to full strength, and then you use all your strongest attacks. Like with the Blood Fiend team, they got, like, Gregor has the extra coin on his skill 3. Rodian has the AoE. Barber Otis has the AoE. Um, Sancho Don has the all the other different attacks with her hard blood. But I find that in many cases, by the time you actually get those attacks ready, the enemy is practically dead already. So it's kind of a bummer. Like, even if I build them up pretty quickly, but that also means the enemy's taking a lot of bleed damage. Ah, all right. Well, finishing thoughts. I would like to round back around to the Stefan 2-star ID thing. I also wish they had Hook Ryoshu and Hook Merceau, but I don't see them going back and adding more IDs based on previous Walpurgs, especially given the power creep. It'd be nice. Like, that's something that I've just been saying a lot, but it'd be nice to see some of these things. But I understand why they don't do these things. Because at the end of the day, Project Moon doesn't have infinite resources. I think they're doing really well with what they have. Granted, they have been making a good bit of money on Olympus, but they're also being very ambitious and spending that money to make the game better and expand on other media content. And I'm pretty sure they're still in the middle of a legal battle with the goofy goobers who thought it'd be funny to sue the company or something over like Wonder Lab and stuff like that, which I think was kind of ridiculous. Like, I'm not even going to get into it. This video has kind of been enough yapping as it is. I'm sure you got better things to do. Well, if you're on YouTube, maybe you don't have better things to do, but I do. I'm sorry, maybe I'll yap more later, but that's all for now, I think. Let's a quick check. I like the tree. Oh yeah, I also wanted to say that I don't think this is going to be quite as busted as people think it is. Like, Esgu compared it to Manager Don because of, like, you get the extra unbreakable coin, but I don't think it's going to be as cracked as he thinks it is because this is literally just target marked with an additional coin. And I know that can be quite strong, but this is just a glorified assist attack with Heathcliff, and it requires Heathcliff to be off the field. So, so you're literally just supplementing the damage that Heathcliff would have done in the first place with this damage here. And of course, this also all relies on Hang Lu, not taking the fat L because he's going to be doing more work just in Heathcliff's place. So I think this is all balanced. Also, Manager Dawn had a lot of AoE on her too. Like 4 attack weight on a normal skill is the most that we've ever had aside from Magic Bullet. And Manager Dawn's not even a Walpurgis ID. So that is pretty impressive. Um, Also, they like I'm pretty sure that yeah, you see here there's no real differences behind these two IDs except for that extra, well, not ID skills. There's no differences beyond that extra coin and some support for that extra coin. It's not like Manager Dawn where the entire skill fundamentally changes, gains a bunch of unbreakable coins, gets AoE, kills everything, adds more status effects, more blah 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 blah. Like the one thing that really changes is the power counter. But you gotta run out of ammo first, so it's not something you can spam. It's gonna be once, like, it's once in a while. I don't know how much ammo they're gonna have. I'm gonna assume maybe around 10 to 15. I'd expect them to be around 10 so that they spend all their ammo fairly quickly in maybe a couple few turns, and then they turn on their clashable counter, retreat, and they come back with ammo, repeat. Obviously, Project Moon's going to want you to actually interact with this, and they also put some incentive into making these actually useful defense skills, which I like because a lot of defense skills end up dead in the water. Like, evade was the strongest in the game for a reason because you could completely evade damage and you could use it repeatedly. And a lot of evades also has some special effects on them, but even if they didn't have special effects, they were still good. Regular counters kind of garbage because you could probably just get staggered before it goes off. Clashable counters, at least they feel useful. And I genuinely think that most counters should be changed retroactively to clashables, maybe reworked. It depends on the unit. So that's why I say most, not all. But it would make them so much more useful and would actually give you a reason to activate your defense skill for once. And similarly for block, at least to block some damage. But like against stronger attacks, like what was even the point? You would just get staggered anyways. Might as well use an eco. It was like last ditch effort. But a clashable guard at least does something again. You can block the attack. And I think them being clashable is also fairly balanced considering it's not like you just get free damage. if the enemy's not attacking you, like if they're staggered or something, then you can't clash with them. So your counter or your guard will not do anything again. So it's fair. And I also think it's interesting that, it took an entire clashable rework to just make them on par with Evade. Evasion hasn't gotten any changes and it's still really strong. But I am personally finding myself using the clashable skills now because you can use them in non-focused encounters and block some backline damage. And I really like solo runs and also teams that are smaller than usual, like the Blood Fiend team. It's just 4 people. Though granted, I also gravitate towards even smaller teams with 1, 2, 3 units. Like the She team only has 3 units in it. And if they had something like a clashable counter, they could also target enemies at the back of the line or protect against them. I also really liked using Wild Hunt Heathcliff because of the clashable counter. Because if there was like an enemy using a defense skill like an evade or a block or whatever, or they were staggered in the front, but there's an enemy in the back that's going to deal fatal damage, and I need to stop that attack, but I don't have enough normal attacks to do it because it's a non-focused encounter. Enemies scale linearly with your attacks, so you're never going to catch up with those guys in the back unless you use a clashable counter and then you deflect their attack. And that makes the gameplay more interesting because you can actually strategize and you have a solution to that problem instead of just having to take it on the chin and die. And Project Moon is just really good with these innovations like this, and I hope they keep doing things like this where they do new things, spice up the old mechanics that are not as interesting. Overall, they cooked. And they didn't burn the kitchen down, they cooked. Um, yeah, that's it.